I'm going to call this work session to order. Jeff, can you please call for the Urban Renewal Board? Can you please call the roll?
Yes, Board Member Petzold.
Here.
Board Member Smallwood.
Here.
Board Member Sheldon.
Here.
Board Member Walker.
Here.
Board Member Exner.
Here.
Board Member Schneider.
Here.
Board Member Jones.
Here.
Board Chair Pollak.
Here. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Just a reminder on our agenda, we have
I'm sorry. I just wanted to sit down here.
Board Member Hogan.
Board Member
I
Hogan.
apologize.
There he is. All
My
right.
goodness.
So on our meeting agenda tonight, we have the approval of our minutes from our September 7th meeting. And then under new business, we have the cover structures round 2 application review. So let's go ahead and start with our approval of the meeting minutes from our September 7th meeting. Unless there's a discussion or changes, is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
I'll motion to adopt the minutes.
There's a motion by Chris Jones and a second by Kathleen Walker. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Nay. Motion carries. With that, we'll go ahead and get into our new business item, our cover structured program round 2 application review. I see we've got Dave Snyder here as well as Jordan and Jeff. Who's starting our presentation? All right, let's do it.
Would you like me to advance the slides?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So, good evening, Sandy Urban Renewal Board. Tonight, we bring before you the 7 applications we received for the urban renewal portion of the second round of covered structures. There were 6 valid applications from La Bamba, Thai Home, Sandlandia, Bigfoot Growlers, and 2 from Mount Hood Athletic Club, and 1 application from Sandy and Best Western that does not currently meet program guidelines. The methods used to reach out to potential local applicants were the same as for round 1. In addition, I sent a snail mail letter to every potential applicant remaining within city limits, describing the program and encouraging businesses to apply. Oh, there we go. Advance, please. So, and I realize that's really hard to read at this distance, but the projects listed in this slide, along with an estimated total project cost and an estimated total cost of Sandy Urban Renewal Agency, this number reflects the project cost minus the applicant's responsibility. So that'd be the 20% of project cost plus the design and engineering cost, which should total about $5,250 for most projects. One point to note here is that this program, being based on the Facade Improvement Grant Program, only provides a match for the first $100,000 of project costs. See Section 5 of the official program guidelines. Any projects in excess of $100,000 are the sole responsibility of the applicant. So while a large project like the larger of the 2 applications from Mount Hood Athletic Club may have a large estimated total project cost, there is a cap on what the agency will ultimately be financially responsible for. Due to many factors, there may be some proposed projects reviewed tonight that will generate some discussion. When reviewing these proposed projects, staff's suggestion is simply to use the listed program objectives, which is Section 2, and the review criteria, which is Section 9 in the SURA program guidelines to help guide your decision-making process. Another factor to consider here is that the designs you are looking at tonight are not actually final designs. These are draft designs intended to give this board enough information to decide on whether or not to move forward with construction. After tonight, the projects that are approved will go to the engineering stage where the engineer will redraw each project depending on the calculations. There might be an additional support needed here, or a thicker support beam needed there. There are almost always field adjustments made where measurements where changes are needed for engineering reasons or because initial measurements were slightly off. For instance, there are 2 proposed projects tonight, Bigfoot Growlers and Thai Home, where we're going to have to hire a surveyor to look at some property lines to make sure we're on the right side of those lines. In one case with Bigfoot Growlers, the property line it borders an ODOT easement. So we really want to make sure we're on the right side of that line. If we need to make field adjustments to these designs, we will, to make sure that we're on the right side of that. However, it doesn't make sense to hire and pay a surveyor to do this until we're certain we're going to move forward with the project. So that's why we haven't done that yet. That's pretty much it. You guys have been through this process before. The first thing I'd like to ask your opinion on tonight is about the project that does not meet current program objectives. Are you okay with me disqualifying this applicant, or would you like to discuss changing the program rules?
Well,
And that's the one for the Sandy and Best Western.
right, that's just not in the I mean, that's in our report, but
Yes.
it's not on the slide.
Yeah, that's correct, because
Right.
I haven't done a design for them.
Oh, okay, okay. So I guess that's the first item of discussion. So do you want to, at least, you want to present a little background for us? on that?
Yeah, so the owner of the Sandy and Best Western asked if he was eligible for the program, and I said, well, not the way the rules are currently written. And he said he would like to apply for the project anyway. There is a letter from him in the attachments that explains his reasoning for it.
Can you summarize that?
Basically, it's for him to have to be honest, Counselor, I'm not
So,
entirely certain what his logic is behind that. He argues to have a place for his customers to gather in the event that they
just one sec, Kathleen, I'm gonna go to you. I want to see how can we access the letter though? You
Is-
said,
In the file.
because I didn't
It's in
see
the
it when I.
attach- it's
yeah,
It's in the attachment.
attachment.
you know,
It should-
And what he did, he actually just said, that they serve breakfast. That's why I was like a little confused, because they serve breakfast every day. And so this is an area where people, like any Best Western, they have, you sit there and have breakfast. And if you had an option to sit outside and eat breakfast, I certainly would do it during COVID. And so I thought that was a little bit arbitrary, given that like Whippersnappers isn't really a restaurant either, but, they're not really a fitness center either, and so we kind of, are looking at doing that. So I wasn't quite sure. It seemed like I could kind of interpret it to
I don't
include it.
I don't disagree with that. I guess in my mind, was it maybe that he's not charging directly for the breakfast and it's like. kind
it's
of a
just that he's
service
not a
that's
food
staying
or
there?
beverage based business is what I base that on, being a hotel and not.
Oh,
a
as far,
restaurant.
because it's not its central
Correct.
thing. Okay, well then I think the Whippersnappers case holds to be true. And this is nothing against the owners of Whippersnappers or anything they're doing there. It's just, you don't go there to eat pizza. You
Sure.
go there so your kids can play and they eat pizza while they're there playing, right? And so I understand Kathleen's point with that.
Well, I think when you pay a
Yeah.
you pay for the room, you end up paying for the breakfast. I
Right,
mean,
Yeah,
it's-
yeah, sure.
It may appear to look be free, but it's.
It's always worked out.
And I anticipated you guys would probably have there would be some discussion about Whippersnappers too.
Do you have any idea on the cost for the hotel
No,
one?
because again, I haven't done the design for them because technically they don't meet the.
Do you mind though, will you conceptually take us through it? So, I mean, and I know that you haven't gotten to drawings or anything like that, but like, are we talking of, probably most of us have stayed at like a Courtyard Marriott or something where there's kind of that outdoor back, family sitting area. I
Mhm.
mean, is that kind of what we're assuming they're proposing?
I'm assuming he's proposing, and I have not talked to Heaton directly about this or his manager over there, although that's something I certainly could do. I'm assuming that they would propose something like just a basic 20 by 20 square structure that would be somewhere near their entrance, because I think they'd want it to be visible. But I don't know that for certain.
Well, I guess, do we want to, I guess the conversation is, do we feel, we're not approving that project tonight. We're just basically saying, do we feel good enough about it that we would be willing to see an application for the project? Yeah.
I think, as an urban renewal function, promoting tourism is a good thing for urban renewal. Can you give us any history as to whether Best Western has taken advantage of the facade program in the past? Are there other opportunities that could be utilized under the more broad urban renewal? Could this be packaged with how to update an aging hotel?
Well, I believe Heaton just did do a facade improvement on his hotel.
Yes, we did.
No.
No, it wasn't a facade
We did
project.
not.
We did not contribute to it.
So
So-
he went through a facade. He improved his building out of their own personal
their own.
pocket.
Oh, he did. Okay, because he did go through the facade program and we did approve it, but he didn't utilize it.
No, he
So-
did not get approved, Lori.
So a little history on that. He did apply for the program. We ended up going through the bidding process with Mr. Patel 3 times. and I can't remember the exact details of all of that, but after the second time we went through it, I think opted not to go through it a third time because
Okay.
it took up, I believe, a year of my time. To do that.
I will say though, and not that I want to get into all of this, but having been part of that, I have always personally felt that that was a mistake that I made on council. And the reason for that is being a new mayor and a councilor at the time, I didn't feel that I had the right perspective on how hard it is for a community of our size to attract a hotel.
Right.
And with a hotel, whether it's a family reunion or a swim meet or a baseball tournament, it really is people's experience with our community. It's like where they're staying. It's where we put our family and friends, whether they come in and out and all those kinds of things. And so I guess I just give that background to say that even though it was our third iteration, it was taking up a lot of staff time. I do wish I was a little bit more nuanced just in my individual decision-making at the time about like what a hotel like that means to a community of our size, right?
So if I can reply on where I was going with this.
Yeah.
In general, I don't approve of the covered structures program. I haven't from the very beginning. I've supported it because it was approved by the prior council before I came in, and I didn't want to like be disruptive. That said, of all the things that we are looking at doing, there's 2 or 3 that stand out in my mind that as being big benefits from an urban renewal perspective. Hotel is one of them. So even though I'm not supportive in general, improving a hotel makes sense to me. The other is Sandlandia and things like that, where we've gone away from Sandy style and we have an opportunity to now go back and pull those style elements back in. So those are things that I support.
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, not knowing what all the different plans would be or anything, I guess I moved my thoughts about this down to this is a way for us to develop our businesses and do it in a way that would benefit them in difficult times, COVID, all the other things that are happening at the moment. And I think about what this might do for our business of a motel. We have one motel in the city. We're always hoping for more, but it's one of those things where if we can make a business be more productive, more profitable by allowing them to have an outdoor seating of some kind. That I think was what was in my mind why I voted for the others that were actually restaurants and food just serving kind of folks. And I think that even though this is a very unusual kind of a value on it, I think it does help the business. I do think we need to support our local businesses, and I'm not sure why this would be voting against this one. It does seem to be like it's an investment in our properties and our businesses, so that I guess I would be supportive of this, as it makes a way for us to be more profitable with our business, extend some of their outdoor season that I know everybody is looking for a way to make that happen. As a permanent development, that would be something I would support. So I'm inclined to think that in the concept of what these things are trying to do, I guess I put it on the positive side of that. It's a little bit off the beaten path. I get that part, but I think I come down as I would be supportive of it because it does support the additional time that they can use the facilities outdoor.
So we feel, and not to move us too quickly, it's just that this isn't really a final decision for this particular project. So is there, I guess I'll just throw out, is there anyone who kind of objects to us just seeking an applicant or saying that we would take an application for this kind of a project?
I don't disagree with seeking the application. I just want to caution us in the fact that there's more than just the one interaction that David's had. He's had a few others, I believe, too, as well as some other programs in our city, like Sandy, that when we've gone above and beyond as a city to help out this particular business owner to only be drug out and has, to be honest, in ways wasted a lot of our own time here that could have gone to other citizens or other businesses. So I worry about that, and I'd like to make sure there's some guardrails on what we do going forward with this, if we are, because I don't want to see that happen again. And that's in my course of being here for a few different projects that we were trying to help them out on, feeling like we're left holding the bag and wanting more, and whatever we do is not a good enough type thing for them, and why aren't we doing more? Like, so I just leave that perspective because he described one of them, and I can think specifically of another one that Joe Knapp was working on to help benefit them drastically, but it just wasn't going to impossible to work with. So that's where I want to be cautious and make sure some guardrails are there so we don't lose track of that over time. I think it just detracts from other businesses and good partners we've had when we're trying to give them a grant.
In response to that, I think I agree that there are concerns about business people who are difficult, but then that, to my mind, that's not a reason to not allow them to be part of this particular kind of proposal and project. Difficulty indicates maybe a business person doesn't understand, or maybe they just are difficult to work with. But I would hesitate to say that we should not let them apply and consider them along with the rest of them, just because they are difficult to work with. You might eventually, and I know the history of this particular business person, same as you do, Councilman, but I think it's important for us to be fair and equal in all the things that we're looking at in terms of businesses.
And I agree with that. I think there's just a little gray area on how we interpret who could apply for it or not. And so that's where we have that discretion there.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, since,
It might be
there's a
worth
little
it.
bit of gray area
It might be worth it to understand where that line is. In this particular case, I feel like we're getting awfully close to the edge of whether this business qualifies for this kind of a project or not. So maybe there's some more discussion to be made by the board.
Well, I would say let's proceed, and then we'll have more discussions at that time. Okay, so let's jump into the rest of the projects. here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So back up on the spreadsheet. So just so I understand the board's instruction here, I will move forward with getting a design done for them, and then I will bring that back to you for your review.
Yeah, and then remind me, do you solicit the bids, or does
I solicit
the
the bids.
applicant?
I solicit the bids.
So what if the applicant wants to solicit bids?
That's fine.
Okay.
You can. As long as they're qualified contractors, yeah, it doesn't matter.
Cool.
I think technically, Chair would probably want the board to revise the criteria to allow hotel establishments to apply.
Do we need to, or can we just slide them in under the breakfast serving food establishment criteria? Because I prefer that at this point rather than wholesale changing.
Or hospitality.
Right.
I guess we certainly could, to the mayor or the chair's previous, other example, whippersnappers too could be split under, which they did. They did, so.
It feels like there's some staff discretion that can easily take place.
You could consider it a restaurant.
Sure.
That's fine. Okay.
Okay, go ahead and share.
Presentation.
No, that's the wrong one. My apologies.
There we go. Okay.
Want to go through the locations there?
Yeah, so the designs you already have in your packet. I just wanted to show you where the locations of these projects were going to be. So the locations indicated by the yellow box for Sandlandia, we just included the round one structure for reference there.
So I want to be clear on this one.
Mhm.
So this one goes in, the temporary one leaves.
Oh, absolutely. I don't see how you
I
could.
think it's right over the top.
All right, I just. 'cause
That's exactly where the
I
tent is.
kind of thought that's what we were accomplishing last time. So I just want to make
Well,
sure.
we got rid of one of them
Okay.
last time.
Yeah, all right, so, all
Are we
right.
going one at a time?
Yeah, we're going through this one at a time.
Okay, so other comment on Sanlandia then is, I thought they were supposed to put in a bathroom, even if it's just like the it's called the CXT type toilets, like what we have in the plaza. They're concrete exterior toilets that have the Cascadian architecture. They're just a small toilet, flush toilet, what we have in the plaza by the, for the transit center there.
Mhm.
I thought that they were supposed to put something like that in as a requirement for their thing. And I don't know what the whole background is, whether they got out of that requirement or not?
My understanding is that the planning director at the time did not end up ultimately requiring that.
Okay, well, I could see doing that when, you know, they didn't know if it was gonna be a go or anything like that. I can maybe see giving them a buy on that. But here we are, and I guess for me, you know, a porta potty doesn't cut it, and the tent doesn't cut it, and I just feel like that, you know, there was very little investment in this thing to start with. It's been hugely successful. We're all supportive of it. We've already put in, you know, 80,000 or whatever the last one cost. You know, it was like, you know, 75,000 or 3,000 or something. So now, you know, I just feel like, and those CXT toilets cost about $17,000 to $20,000. But I feel like we have a little bit of leverage here that we could say, you know, you put in the toilet and we'll put in this second structure. I just feel like, you know, there's the Bible verse, you know, to those who have much, more will be given. And I'm kind of with this program, I just see some double dipping and things like that that I don't necessarily agree with. But, you know, I'm willing to go that way, but I feel like we're never going to have the opportunity to require that guy to put in a restroom that should have been required to start with, like all the other restaurants. So
You know,
we have some leverage here to require that in order to get this and take down that tent thing. I'd like to pursue that.
It just depends how bad he actually, it's like any negotiation, all right, Kathleen? It just depends how bad he wants that second structure. And
Well, we can have the tent removed. It doesn't meet code.
well, I'm curious of that. I don't know. I'm curious if to me, it doesn't meet code, but maybe there was some sort of an arrangement that was made.
I don't believe that tent currently meets code.
Hold on, because that is not the, and I know that Carl's biting at the bit here. I apologize. Just that's not what has been explained to me in my questioning of staff and stuff. Because I was perturbed, to be the least, that, you know, part of what we're trying to do, part of this investment, especially on this project, I think is to kind of fix some past maybe side steps of kind of the appearance and stuff of that property. And so we're kind of investing in that. And that was mentioned last time. And I was like, well, if we're going to do this, we should insist that the other temporary thing goes, because they're an eyesore. They don't look great. And when I brought that up, I was told, I'm pretty sure that was part of what was approved. And that's an
that could
approved
very well
structure
be.
right there. And so that is why we're sitting here today. That is, I'll be straight up. That is the only reason I'm willing to approve a second spot at covered structure for these guys, is because I'm tired of driving by and seeing a temporary tent, you know, set out front. And so I guess I'd like some clarification personally before we move forward. Can we get rid of the temporary, and maybe we still want to do the secondary thing. I'm not trying to say one or the other, but that's a non-compliant structure that's not approved by the city to be there right now?
You know, honestly, Kelly's the right person to answer that question. I don't know the answer to that question.
So let's bring this back to council meeting. When we go to the council meeting, let's talk about because I think it is not approved, but it's not an urban renewal issue.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point.
So let's bring it up in an hour.
And I think there is a porta potty there. It's an
There are-
88 porta potty.
yeah, there are.
right? Yeah,
There are
but
several.
it's just as ugly as the.
What are you thinking of, Carl? What's going on in your head?
In my mind, this originally was proponent and placed in as a test of what we could do to make this thing happen and to see if it would work or not. There was a lot of questions about whether this was reasonable, whether it would even fly, whether some of the things that we were requesting would make it unprofitable. So we said, okay, let's just do what we did. I can't recall if the bathroom was a requirement or not, and whether it was, those things are past my head. But I do think if the code says, and I would suspect that if you have food being delivered and served, that you need to have a bathroom of correct code, and it needs to be correctly done. But I think that's what I'm thinking of is, let's put it on hold for the moment. Let's take a look at what the code says and what we need to have. And if it's required to have a decent well-constructed bathroom, whether they want it or not, whether they can do it or not. We should make them do it.
Well, that said, and it's not this council or even the last council, but we have rightfully or wrongfully, the way it's been explained to me, and I wasn't even on some of these previous councils, is that the goalpost has been moved on this business owner 3 or 4 different times through the process of this approval deal. And I know any business owners, it's not necessarily always at their for some of the changes or against it. They just need to know the rules of the game, for their overall investment. So that's where I get a little nervous coming back. I think it's been there like 4 years now, where we're gonna come back and insist on something. Now, I'm not so opposed to what Kathleen's saying, because she's kind of like give and
Carrot and
take.
stick.
Yeah, carrot and stick, right? I think it'd be pretty hard to come back now after the fact and, and say, you have to do this.
I don't think it was meant to be a hard and fast, maybe a zone, if you want to make it that. I think it was more of, let's give them what they need to make them profitable and see what happens.
Yeah.
And then that's why I'm saying, if it does require a formal bathroom of some kind, my inclination is if you're a restaurant, you really need to have the right kind of facility.
I disagree.
And a porta potty is probably not my idea of the correct facility. Then they should be required to do that, whether they think they can move forward or not. Now, if they decide not to and they want to leave it as is, and I think we've got a facility there, the tent I'm talking about, that doesn't meet the criteria of what we see downtown, it should probably be moved.
It's a public health issue, long term.
Well, I just see a business that, it's obviously successful, thankfully, to all of our, wishes, but there hasn't been, there's not a lot of investment or maintenance or anything. There's a lot of collecting the rents and not a lot of investment. So it's great. I'm glad it's successful. We basically got rid of the goalposts so that they could do this because I remember, I believe Ron Lasowski was testifying that he had to have bathrooms in his restaurant, and I just remember years ago, that whole discussion about the bathrooms and that they got out of having to have them because we were just dying to try it. And so if we can, I agree with what Carl said, is if we can have some leverage to kind of get this bathroom in, a permanent toilet, and again, it's, in the long term, it's probably cheaper than all the porta potty stuff, but.
So,
that's what- yeah.
so board, so tell me if I'm out of line, but I think what we'd like is, Lori, Lori, go ahead and jump in then.
The only thing I'd like to add to this conversation is that I'd like to see these businesses get a first round through before we look at approving second rounds for people. I mean, has everybody had a shot to go first round, with this program? This is the second time these guys have applied. That'd be my only addition to the current conversation.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Why don't you reapproach? Mention, that there's a strong desire by the board to see a second but there's just as strong of a desire by the board to see the restroom that Kathleen's talking about, and see where you can get to yes.
You may want to go back in the minutes, because of what I recall was there was a kind of, you could build part of it, but if you wanted to expand, then the city was going to make you change the bathroom piece of it, as to my recollection, but it gets foggy over time. So, but it's all in the minutes. You can probably go back. I can't recall if it was 5 years ago or say, time flies in COVID anyways, but, or it stalls, one of the two. But even outside of that, it's been a few years. I'll have to say this: if I take emotion out of it, what do I want to see as my community as I'm driving by? I don't see the bathroom back there. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to see exactly that. I mean, hard for it. But if I take emotion out of it and the history pack behind it and going that, when you drive by, as you said, here you got this kind of, and we come down hard now because, hey, now you applied and now we want you to do something else. And so we're gonna stick it to you. Unfortunately, things have been there for so long, they'd be kind of, whether we like it or not, kind of grandfathered in.
That's right.
And we don't want that at all. But just because how long COVID's also been dragging out, it's kind of created that. And so one of the great things about the covered structure program, and I agree with you, hey, we got one business trying to do two of them, right? Let's get everyone in first with one. But is we get to replace a bunch of these eyesores that could have been just grandfathered in because they've just been there for so long, not because it meant code. That we could have a code and like, well, if you change it, then you're never going to be put it back up. Does that make sense? Like, but I agree with you. As you drive through town, you can see a couple eyesores in the fact that that doesn't meet our style or whatever, and they're not going to go away unless we kind of help them through the process. So that's my thinking on that. And I'd love to see what it said back in the minutes of when that got approved, because we can look up and see when it was permitted and through that process, because it did come in front of the council a few times, not just planning commission.
And I remember there was some allowances for the ant farm right across the street on this thing. And I want to remember that that was taken apart because they couldn't provide the facilities that this one, Sanlandia,
Right.
was done. So
That's right.
there is some fairness involved here. So
Well, they were running one as well, too. They had a couple food carts over there during the same time.
right, but we worked to get them to stop because of some, and I thought it was the bathroom. I don't remember all the words of it, but we
Well,
were
I-
asking them to do some of the things that Sanlandia was required to do, and they just couldn't.
they actually had a bathroom. It was inside that barn.
Right,
Yeah, but
right.
all I remember,
Right,
there was
things.
consternation. I don't remember the details either, but I remember there was consternation in the community about it. for sure.
I think part of it had to do with the pad that they were resting on. They were just resting it on dirt. We required them to rest it on concrete blocks or pads or something like
Yeah.
that.
So
It's a matter of fairness.
So-
I understand the part about, in fact, very strongly understand the part about moving the goalpost pieces, but there's a lot of comments about fairness, about
Mhm.
if you require from one, you really need to do the others too. So I think we just need to make sure that that code is followed.
We could dig into the history here. It was approved in 2015. There's a final order. They reference like a dining tent as part of that condition of approval, portable restrooms that had to be screened. So, yeah, I could get together with Kelly tomorrow and come back to the council, where that decision actually sat, what the interpretation was or whatever, look at the minutes and stuff too, but we try to clear up some of that history and what the permitted, versus what we'd like to see going forward if we can.
and if there's conditions in it, like you just read out, then that is what was approved at that time.
Well, but we just replaced that condition tent and built a structure for them. So,
Well, I was talking about the.
Right.
yeah, the porta potty.
The
sure,
porta potty.
yeah.
All right, we're very decisive on these projects tonight.
All good. It's all good. It's ultimately your decision,
Yeah.
so that's fine.
All right, what's next?
What's the next one, Jeff?
Game show.
That's
next, right?
good.
La Bamba.
La Bamba. So we're gonna put this one right at the
Front.
front of the structure. If you looked at the design, it's pretty neat. The arch actually kind of fits in with the other arches in the facade. And it would provide him with a fair amount of outdoor dining space. Only thing to mention here is that this is one of those that has a little bit of extra work involved. We have to do a turning point template on this to make sure that there's not going to be any issues with the cars coming into the driveway. Driving through the parking lot. And just to be super clear, this entrance right here, I talked to the owner and he said, if we need to close off that entrance, he's totally fine with that.
He wants it that
Because he's
bad.
got
huh?
the entrance and exit on the
Okay.
south side of the lot. And he says hardly anybody ever uses that anyway. So if that ends up being an issue, he's fine with just making that regular curb.
There's bound to be some code issues in that too, so if we're requiring two entrances, two exits.
Oh, yeah, no, I've already talked to Kelly about it. He said that he doesn't think that we'd need to close it off, but if we did, that would be fine.
I mean, I feel like this is right in why we're doing the program.
Yeah.
Is there any-
Well, in La Bamba, I mean, here's a guy that went and came off our main street, not our main street, our highway, trying to get back to what we were gonna consider a new main street.
Mhm.
We needed someone to do this, and then also during that time, he takes a personal cut because, he benefited because now he owns the building, but he's betting on the city following through with the whole Main Street aspect of things of bringing business back towards him as he's off the main beaten path. And we don't have any restaurants off the main beaten path.
Yeah.
So maybe down by the theater, but I like it.
I like it. Is there any nays to it?
Nope, sorry.
Okay, good. Outstanding. Next project, Tie Home. This is a really interesting one. The only real place to put this is kind of where their deck is. So we'll involve a little bit of deconstruction, reconstruction of the deck. I'm sorry.
Which is shot.
There are parts of it that may need a little work. If it needs a little extra work on, well, if there are areas that need additional work that aren't in the exact space of the structure, that will be on them. So
Now, well, one is, I'll declare my bias. This is my grandfather's old shoe repair shop in town.
is it really?
It is. Yeah, I grew up playing around in the house and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that deck, yeah.
No, I'll also say that these guys actually reached out to me before any of this stuff, right after as we were going through round one.
Yeah.
And as politely as they could said, how can we get in on this program?
Well, that's outstanding. So have they done a facade improvement at all?
No, I don't believe they have.
You know, just my personal bias on this. I'd love for you to engage in a facade improvement, you know, with this at the same time we're doing this. I think back to our goal setting for this council that we did. Remember, we did that fun little game of your favorite restaurant in town. Tie Home was right up there. And as I talk to people, that is the experiences that I would love to do our part to improve that experience.
They started the conversation with me by saying that they do have, they are going to paint the building soon. That may be this summer. They may have to wait until next summer. They're not sure yet. But painting the building is going to be part of this.
That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as of this point in time, the cost associated for Tie Home do not incorporate redoing the decking.
No, that
structure.
cost that's listed is with the deconstruction, reconstruction involved. The structure itself isn't really that large. But yeah, those costs were taken into consideration. Well, we'll find out really when we go through the bidding process.
But they're held to the same max as everybody else, right?
And they own that building. They're not.
I believe so, yeah.
The only reason I ask that is because we have to engage the owner of the building.
Oh, yeah. No, they own both the building and the restaurant. I believe the way they have it up is he owns the building, she owns the restaurant.
For a really big summer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
sounds like a thumbs up on this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, my first question on this one,
Leave the people online.
did we ever find out, are they, oh yeah, let's make sure we can see the people online.
Yeah.
Did we find out from Big Growlers what's going on there?
Yes, I was able to get a hold of Wilberth, the owner. This is what I was told. He had to fire his chef. He didn't say why. He said 1 to 2 weeks and then we'll be back open. That was more than 2 weeks ago. They're not open. So I don't know what's going on with Bigfoot Growlers right now. Also, just to be clear, the applicants on this one is actually the Turas, the property owners, not the restaurant owners. They want to do it to help out the restaurant owners to ensure that they're successful.
So Bigfoot Growlers today is not open.
No, correct.
I move that we do not act on this until it opens. Because it doesn't meet.
And actually, that's what I was going to suggest. I was going to suggest putting this one on hold too until we know more about what's going on with them, because I mean, you could make the argument that it would help the property, but really, I mean, my idea of the board's intent was to help the businesses.
Well,
and if there's no business,
but I mean, you help the property, you help the business, but the other things I'd be curious, some of the questions I would need to have answered on this is the building owner's long-term vision for the building as well. And I know, you never bring in a restaurant and say, well, we have other long-term plans, but I mean, I feel like we've had throughout the years them in with several different concepts for this location. And it just makes me a little nervous that we would invest this amount of money when, maybe this project doesn't work out for this particular, person with the lease. And now we're going a completely different direction with the building, and we're as a community out $100,000.
This is one of my big concerns with this program is we
In
don't
general,
have,
sure.
we do not have that tie or that guarantee for the usage will continue, especially with restaurants, come and go. That's just the nature of the business.
Yeah, but in my mind, when you improve the building, it is, in this particular case, it's a long-term thing. These are not things that we're going to spend a lot of money on. They're easily damaged and they're gonna be thrown away pretty quickly. These are the structures that I'm seeing in all the ones that we've done so far. Those are pretty
You're right.
long-term discussions. And
But the
I
program.
don't want to
was-
argue against you, but I am on the other side of this. I think
Well,
these are
the-
very important facilities.
Program motivation was to help restaurants, right?
Businesses and
Well, it
food was a
specifically
crucial piece of
identified
it.
restaurants. So I think these are some of the, we did it quick. It needed to be happened. It was COVID. We're now 2 years in. I think, and this is why I didn't want to modify the program earlier. I think it's time to look at what we want to achieve with this program longer term.
Mhm.
And look at how it fits in to the overall facade improvements and the bigger vision, because giving out 80 grand gifts to random businesses just doesn't seem like a good sustainable plan for city council.
I don't think that we are, I think you're both right. I don't think we're as far down the line as you suggest, Don, only because we're in the middle of Omicron and shutdowns and increased mandates and everything else. And beyond that, I would say is we also don't necessarily have an understanding as to how our elected leaders respond to epidemics and pandemics and virus, infectious diseases and stuff these days. If this is the manner in which that we are going to tackle every bird flu and every infectious virus that comes over from, a foreign land, we may need outdoor cover structures for our restaurants and for our workout facilities and stuff so that we can be nimble for times of spreading viruses. So but at the same time, we got to be long-term in our thinking and how that it's in our facade plan. So I try to split it between you two because I think you're both right in that. But Don, I have a hard time believing when I think through the projects we're funding, whether it's Sandy Family Restaurant or the Red Shed or Thai Home, those aren't going to be anything but restaurants. And if they aren't a restaurant, it's going to be a very retail focused, business model establishment. And an outdoor covered area is going to be a tremendous asset to both of those business models. The way I view it.
The only thing I would add to it, and I think you alluded to it somewhat, and Don, I think was headed that direction too, is to put a facade in, to put a shelter in front of every single business does not seem to be the reasonable thing. And maybe we should throw a little bit of planning into it. And I know I'm going to get a gasp from the city manager because of all the jobs we've already put on its plate. But to decide where those should be with some specificity, some purpose, is probably a pretty good idea and probably something to be thinking about. So where do you want to stop the shelters? In my mind, we've got quite a bit more to go before I get to that question. The hotel is one of those that gets me close to it, but this one doesn't get me close.
I would like a little perspective of how much ARPA funds, just a reminder, how much ARPA funds have we been allocated? How much have we been given so far? And then how much have we allocated to spend? Because, we're funding a lot of projects here. And it's like, how much more ARPA do we have? What's our runway?
$2.5 million.
Yeah.
That's already been received. 450,000 was already earmarked for this program to repay for round one.
Yeah.
But not for these, that's for the.
Right, for the first round.
Yes.
And then we have another 1.2 and change million coming next summer. And so the council is not allocated or earmarked any of those funds for the second tranche.
So I need to be, I'm confused. The ARPA money, what is the only ARPA money we're using for covered structures is the whippersnappers and we back funded some from the round one.
Yes, we back funded the round one.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for tonight's purposes, the general fund applications we're proposing to use are.
Right. Okay.
I'm sorry.
that's
So how
even
much,
better.
so roughly how much ARPA money do we have left?
After,
Under the first round and with what's proposed tonight?
so to be clear how to answer this. So the council did, we had that work session, then we had a council meeting, 1.2 million was committed to a number of different things, including cover structures round one.
Okay, that's fine. 1.2.
So we got
Gone.
1.2 coming in August.
Okay.
Another 1.2.
But we spent it. I mean, we have it allocated.
We have not allocated the second tranche.
The second, so we have
It comes next
1.2
summer.
left.
Yeah.
We've allocated the first tranche.
Yes.
We have the second tranche coming, but this would go, all these projects would go against the second tranche. No,
We're just proposing urban renewal or for the general fund applications, Smoky Park or.
so for this purposes, we're not talking any ARPA, we're just talking straight urban renewal. We could use ARPA.
One thing, can you put the slide back up, Dave, for the growlers one?
Sure, just 1 second.
Because the distance between like that white roof and the sidewalk is about 16 feet.
Mhm.
And the plans show the whole thing like 20 feet, so
Yeah, that was probably an error on the, when we drew it up, and that's something that would be corrected by the engineer.
okay, and that would also affect the cost, I would imagine. So the cost would probably go down.
A little bit.
If you're
yeah.
not a 20-foot.
Yeah,
structure
a little
and
bit.
stuff, so.
Is
So
it
I
just-
kind of understand what Don's saying as far as business that's not open at this point. I guess I want to make sure that we've got a commitment.
A real business.
Totally.
So what I'm hearing from the board is put this one on hold until we know more about what's going on with business.
That's what I was gonna suggest. When it, it sounds like they should know within a few
Yeah,
weeks.
I would think so.
hope, or else they're not gonna be there probably.
Find out.
Yeah, and we'll have to do these in stages anyway. We'll have to, like we did last time, like 2 at a time. So this is one that I can just, and since we're gonna have to look for the property line information anyway, this is one that I would not push forward as one of the first projects anyway. So I'll come back to you with some information.
Okay, cool.
Next one, and these are the two from Mount Hood Athletic Club. So first of all, we have the pool structure. This was originally a facade project that Mr. Reed decided to include in this program instead. The structure is 12 by 17, and I believe the intention is to use the structure to serve beverages poolside.
Is that why you have the half walls on 2 sides of it?
Correct.
Because that really adds to the cost.
Wait, what did, oh,
They've got like the stone wall on 2 sides of the previous.
so she almost set up like a bar kind of.
I thought that was the other one that had the 2 sides. Both of them have 2 side walls.
I think this one has 3, doesn't it?
So I'm
Or
gonna
no, maybe
just
it's only 2. My bad.
put out my feelings about the Mount Hood right now, and you guys can counter them, I suppose, but I question how this is helping a business survive COVID, because this is a business that has managed to survive COVID already. I don't know how this positions it to be any better at surviving whatever the next avian flu or whatever it is down the road. And it's an exclusive business that not everybody can go to without a membership. So this creates some economic disparity, if you will, from who gets to benefit from this. So I struggle with this one. I don't support the Mount Hood Athletic Club, either one of those proposals.
Well, at this time, right? 'Cause we always leave our minds open-minded to discussion. But,
As of this second.
okay. Yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah, 'cause
Yeah, you're
I
right.
try to leave my mind open.
You're right.
Yeah, yeah.
No, but I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree with Don on this one in terms of it is exclusive. I'm not sure I agree with a portion about, I guess I disagree that it isn't something that would help them in the long run to provide some outdoor, since that seems to be the solution for a lot of these businesses to get more business going. So it looks to me like it would benefit the business, but it is, you're right, Don, it's exclusive. It comes to some question in my mind.
So, all right, because I've been struggling with this one too. But isn't everywhere exclusive? If I gotta pay for a cheeseburger, that it's exclusive. And it's the business model in which these guys decide, this business decides to drive their revenue for their service. And the truth is I could go in as a non-member tomorrow and pay non-member fee and get day use access to the gym, which isn't a lot different than going in and paying a fee to eat at a buffet or to sit down and eat at a restaurant or anywhere else. As far as how this would address a upcoming flu pandemic, we didn't get to see the second proposal, but they are proposing an outdoor fitness area, which would have met the current mandates. And then the outdoor area, and I'm honestly not for or against it. I've been thinking through this proposal as well. The outdoor area, well, that's just like my story from Red Shed, right? When I was in there and they said, wow, this increases our capacity for revenue, especially in the summer months by 30%. That's increased revenue that comes in. That's what that outdoor bar does. It increases their ability for revenue in the summer months. And sure, they may have succeeded this far through the pandemic, but you could say that about Sandy Family Restaurant, Red Shed, you know, any of these that we're talking about, they're all currently in business today, but we don't know their, you know, the stability of their business, just like we don't know necessarily the stability of this business. So, I mean, I guess those are my cases, not necessarily for it, but why I think it's a proper usage within the program next to everybody else. That they were directly affected by the COVID pandemic. They had shutdowns, they had worse shutdowns than some of the businesses that are, quite frankly, applying in this program. So anyways, that doesn't mean that there's not another way to help these guys. Maybe it's a small business grant or something like that. So I'm not, but that is, I guess that it would be the counter argument to some of what I heard here tonight.
You know, just as a staff suggestion, you know, this was originally a facade project, and I think a pretty good one. And so just something to consider.
I would support it as a facade project.
If I may, I could go kind of both ways on this, but my thought is if we are saying that this is more of a restaurant type situation, a bar situation, and I realize that Whippersnappers is not part of the urban renewal, so, but I kind of look at this as in that Whippersnapper piece as well, as Whippersnappers does serve food, they do serve beverages. And, you know, it kind of, so they're a gym and they're not using the space as a workout space, and they're typically not a restaurant. So I kind of think it could fall both ways. I could go support the facade, or I could support both. But I just wanted to kind of bring up that when you look at Whippersnappers, you know, later on tonight or discuss it when you do, to kind of keep that in mind too, that if we're saying Whippersnappers doesn't qualify as a restaurant, this really isn't a restaurant either, and it's not a workout area. So just something to think about.
Oh boy, great point. Kathleen.
Are they seating in under this thing, or is this where they're prepping food and drinks and stuff?
I haven't seen any indication that they would seat people underneath this structure.
What's the purpose again?
Apparently to serve drinks. I'm not saying I support this or, you know, anything. I'm just saying that's what that's what the usage was at the.
That does change my argument.
I think the pool structure one that we've seen so far, because I haven't seen the other one, we haven't presented on that one, would fall more in lines of the other side of it, the facade thing, than what I think the intent of this, the covered structure thing is.
Yeah,
Because not only is it in there, but it's very, the pool area thing is not open for 3/4 of the year as well. So I'd have a hard time on that part under the covered structure piece of it.
Right.
And so that's where I land on that. I'm not saying it's not a good idea, bad idea. It's just, I don't think this particular one falls under the cover structure piece of it. And as you brought up, there's no seating under it. And the whole purpose was to go outside when you can't eat inside. Or we do have in their athletics, they're not working out underneath this because there's no place to work out under. Because I think that is one of the criteria we do have.
So they are working out under the other one. All right.
Correct.
Okay, we just didn't.
Yeah, you'll see that one
Yeah, we
next.
just haven't seen
Yeah, this is the other one. This is the large. So just so I'm clear on this one, sounds like no on the pool structure
Well, under this program.
under this program. So you guys would be okay if I approached the owner and said, well, not under covered structures, but this would make a great facade project.
Well, maybe
Bring it back.
No, yeah,
See what
and
you
then
got.
if he wants to apply for that facade project, then I'll bring that back.
Right.
it just would be a better applicational use
Right.
under that.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
This other one is very large. It's 86 feet wide. As you can see, it takes up an entire bank of parking spots. It's a really large, really expensive structure. However, I point back to, I believe it was section 5 of the program guidelines. It says that we only, the covered structures program only covers the first $100,000 of a project. After that, and anything over $100,000 is the sole responsibility of the applicant. So this wouldn't end up,
Which is great.
Yeah.
Because it allows them to go as crazy as they want, but we
This is
only
what I'm
can
saying.
go a certain distance.
And just to
Correct.
clarify, we're only responsible for 85,000 now.
Correct.
Right, okay.
correct.
You kept saying 100 and.
Well, $100,000 of project cost, of which we're
Right.
responsible for 80% plus the D&E. So
So since you hit the lead on the other structure, what's the use on this one?
outdoor, working out outdoors. This is legitimately where he would like to hold outdoor classes.
Okay, so no restaurant facilities, just primarily just.
No, entirely
exercising.
workout. He was even talking about putting a door in so you can enter the street. You don't have to go around the front door. You can go directly there.
But it would be used for like, when they say you can't do indoor things.
Correct.
Yeah.
And he says he would like to use it for that purpose, regardless of,
Yeah,
I mean,
I think there's some people that just like
Yeah.
going outside. and getting
Absolutely.
Fresh air.
And is this gonna be fenced or something, or could I just walk up for the?
I think you'll be able to just walk up. It is going to require a little bit of concrete at the bottom, so there will be a little bit of a concrete pad.
But how do you keep just the riffraff from coming in and using the?
I don't,
treadmill?
well, I think that will be,
His problem.
yeah,
I mean, so, but you're right, because, I was just at Boring Brewing this week and Bill had to put up fencing and stuff all around there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which has worked great. He hasn't had a problem since.
Business, yeah.
Yeah. So it may be that he may have to do what Bill Schwartz did and put some like black powder coat cyclone fencing around it at some point, but we'll see.
So
I mean, that's up to him.
The reason I ask is because I'd rather see that kind of designed in as part of the structure rather than just some
Okay.
slapped up crap thing.
They are a problem. It's an unforeseen issue, is these covered structures do attract shelter for some of the
Well,
homeless community.
I'm
So
not
you're
even
right.
talking about that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if he's got exercise equipment, I
Well,
mean, I
that too.
can't get on the exercise
Yeah.
equipment unless I go in the front door and
Yeah, right.
push my car.
Well, I don't,
So
Good
that's,
point.
that's what I'm saying is how do you keep the riffraff off the treadmill? I could just walk up and start using the equipment and look like I belong there.
I'm not.
I
sure
don't-
We care. I think,
Yeah.
I'm for, we're limited to 85 grand anyway, which is the structure, so.
Right, my
If
point is
he
though,
is-
is that I think for that reason, he would logically be requiring some sort of a barrier thing to go around it, so you can't just walk up and get on the treadmills. And therefore, I would like to see that as part of the design at some point, not now, but at some point, incorporate that so it doesn't look like some half-assed thing that was added on after the fact, if we're spending all this money on it. Lori's got a question.
Yep,
I-
all right, go ahead. Okay, just real quick, because I caught the point right at the very end. I think that's right. I want to reiterate it, which is the worry, as I took from what Kathleen was just talking about, is if we don't require it within the design of the structure, that the owner's going to see the need for it after the fact and kind of jerry-rigger it themselves, instead of having to be kind of part of this design structure, that we all approve of and like. Does that?
Yes.
Yeah, Lori, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that we might want to find out what his intent is for this, because it could be if he's wanting to hold classes and things, he may not be going to store equipment outside. It may be one of those situations where people take their equipment out to work out and then take it back inside the gym. So,
that's exactly correct, Counselor. He does not have any intention to put any workout equipment or treadmills or anything like that outside. I think it's just for like CrossFit type classes where they can bring the ball or the weights or whatever they can with them and take them back inside of it.
All right.
Until I work out a lot.
Things change over time, and I look at what's going on at some of these other structures that are there. People are starting to already think about, well, and we've got some homeless people cuddling up inside the structure already and starting to use it. So how do I keep that from happening? And it may be that there'll be something to be added as we go along. But I agree with the point about we want to make sure that it is following the look that we're after. That's really crucial, and how we protect that. But to be able to say to every person who will in the future, I guess, be required to build these things to our standards. I'm not sure that protecting the structure from people who would be wanting to use it, call it illegally, but because they are homeless, is the way we want to be. But as we move through that design standard, we would not let them, in terms of our code, put up an ugly old fence anyway. So to me, if they wanted to add a security system of some kind, which included a fence, we'd probably be very involved in. I hope so. Say it's got to be a certain quality color, it's got a certain quality height, certain look and all that.
So knowing we're in it for 80,000 to max, right?
85.
85,000. It's just something that we want to approve and move forward on. Get done.
I just want to counter the exclusivity comment
Oh,
about
sure.
you can just pay your fee and go in.
Yeah.
The amount of tech cost to go in on a visitor pass there is actually cost prohibitive relative to going up and buying a drink or whatever they may serve or whatever, or even using the facility. It's still an exclusive thing. And the other point is 85 grand, only 85 is still a lot of money. And it feels like this is a purpose that doesn't really, it's not really tied in my mind to what this program was originally for. And it's also a large structure. I don't know how it ties into their parking requirements and other design things that they committed to when they first built the facility, but so anyway, I disagree.
Lori.
Well, I want to counter on you a little bit, Don, here is that, you know, when I look at this grant, and what we're trying to accomplish here, gyms were disproportionately affected by COVID, just like restaurants were. They were told that they couldn't, you know, they weren't allowed to collect dues. They weren't allowed to do all this stuff. People weren't allowed to work out for almost, I mean, I can't remember, they were closed for 2 different periods. So I look at this as something where this business owner is trying to be proactive and create space where his members can still come in, work out, and he can justify, you know, continuing to make a living in this community. So this project I do support.
Yeah, and I think it's not as fun, and for lack of a better word, as sexy as some of the other restaurant locations. And, you know, you're sitting out on the street or wherever on Main Street and that whole experience. But the truth is that it's exactly why the program was developed, for a business that was disproportionately and drastically affected by COVID, that would provide them an alternative means of being open for business if they were affected by something similar like this again in the future. That's means, you know, in present time, you know, as they move forward. And then and I don't want to keep going back and forth on it. We'll both have our own differences of opinion on it, but we are not in a place to tell Rhea what she should charge for a cheeseburger, or what, you know, what the no place should charge for a beer, or what Mount Hood Athletic Club wants to charge for a day use or a membership fee or whatever else. This is the manner in which this is their business model. And we are here to help out a business that was drastically affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we can have differences of opinion on it, but I do believe it actually does fit the program, or at least my intended reason why I supported the program. Yeah, Carl.
Now,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So for what it's worth, I greatly see where Don's coming from, because it is a membership-based business model. But with that being said, you know, throughout my time here, I've heard that this covered shelter program is designed to help restaurants and gyms specifically. I can't think of a gym that doesn't have that model as a business model. So that's kind of why I'm going back to that. If that was our goal, was to support those kind of businesses, specifically those 2 things, I feel like we're kind of obligated to help them conduct an outdoor area to do that based on what we set our goals for them.
And I'll just comment, and I understand exactly where you're coming from, Don, in that same thing. But back to Rich's comment is, you know, the criteria is where the food establishments and gyms. And so we only have a couple of gyms in our city, so we're definitely calling them out when we put it in place. So in that instance of it, for the same reasons, they were hit harder in a lot of ways than other types of businesses when not being able to recover from that. And hopefully we'll never have to go back into that situation again. But if we do, this is why the program is in place.
I'm not going to discuss the other parts of it, but I do think, though, we have to keep in mind, we have a code. one of those situations that we talked about was it's just going to take away parking. If our planning department feels that this is going to get in the way of the parking and doesn't satisfy the code, it's got to be modified or it won't happen. So to me,
have a parking code though.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
not in terms of
Not in the
numbers.
downtown
Oh, that's
zone.
C2. That's
Yeah.
C2.
Yeah,
That's
that's
C2.
correct.
You're
Yeah.
right. So it doesn't make a difference whether it's C2 or not. It's if we have a code that says you have to have so many parking spaces and this one takes away too many, then it can't happen. So to me, in concept, we should be focusing on the policy of this thing, not all the details of whether or not there's 2 or 3 parking spaces that are missing. I don't want to get in your face, Don, because I really understand what you're talking about. We need to make sure our application is correct. So I'm in favor of it, the outside one, the big one, because it does really seem to support what we're trying to do to help a business.
And Counselor Exner, I can address that with the planning department tomorrow. I'm pretty sure that they have an abundance of parking, but I'll confirm that, and make sure.
It should follow the rules.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody needs to follow.
All right.
So just to summarize, I have, as approved, La Bamba Thai Home and the large structure at Mount Hood Athletic Club. I have Sandlandia and Bigfoot Growlers on hold for the reasons stated. And I have the pool structure denied. Do I have everything correct? Okay.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Jordan, you look like you have something to add before I adjourn the work session. I guess
No,
the
there was
urban
just a
renewal
couple
meeting.
Yeah, there's just a couple of things that we're going to follow up on too with the
Yes.
the San Landia conditions of approval and then part of the hotel. So now that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
allow
Thank
them
you.
to Reapply.
And I will, yeah, I'll get a design going for the hotel to bring in front of you guys too. Cool.
Lots of back and forth tonight, but these are really cool projects. And I think it's going to lead to a really neat summer and future here in our community. So great work to staff. I know a lot of work goes into this. Thank you for the presentation, all that legwork. And thank you to Chris and Chief Snyder for participating tonight. See you guys. Let's adjourn for the next couple of minutes and then reconvene around 7:10 or just after.